Elijah the prophet. Elijah the prophet. Where do you remember hearing about Elijah? Think of the holidays that you observe in your house. Think of Passover. When we talk about Elijah coming to the door, open the door for Elijah, we say. So who is Elijah? Elijah is a wonderful prophet in our Jewish liturgy. And Elijah came to, like to visit people in disguise sometimes. Often to sort of test people or to help people. We often think of Elijah the prophet in a mystical way. So this is a story about Elijah the prophet. It's one that I remember hearing my dad tell really in front of this ark. Elijah came as a beggar into a town once. A small town. A town that had some wealthy people and many people without great wealth. But Elijah came this day as a beggar, as someone in need of help, of money, of food. And he went into the town square and he said to people he bumped into, I need help. I need some money or some food. Who could I ask in town for help? And people would say, go to this person down that block, or go to that shopkeeper. He's really generous with people. And each time Elijah would say, but what about that house over there, that big house? Would they help me perhaps with some food or some money? And every single person he encountered, without hesitation, said, no, don't go to that house. They're not generous. They're not even kind. You don't want to go there. Well, guess what? That's exactly where Elijah went. In his garb as a beggar, as someone in need of food and money, he walked slowly up to this grand house. Picture one of the biggest homes you ever saw, with great artwork on it and a beautiful path in a very welcoming way. You would think it would be a welcoming house, even for a beggar. And Elijah came and he knocked on the door softly. Nothing. No response. And so he knocked again a little harder. And from inside you heard, I hate to say it, but a very shrill voice. And the voice would call out, Ozeret! Ozeret! Ozeret is the name for someone who is a helper in the house. And the shrill voice, Ozeret, go to the door, tell them to go away. And the door would open and there would be the helper in the house. And she would say, I don't know what your business is here, but go away. And Elijah was surprised at such a response. He said, I really would like to speak to someone in charge of this home, someone who owns this home. And the Ozeret said, she won't come to this door. She won't come to speak to you. And Elijah said, but I'm going to stay here. I need to ask something. The door closed. You could hear some voices back and forth. And suddenly the door opened again. And a woman stood there who was the owner of the house. Elijah said, you don't know me. I am new to this town. I need some help to get started. I just need some food or some money. And before he could even finish the sentence, the lady said, absolutely not. I don't help strangers and I don't help beggars. And the door closed. And Elijah walked away. But the next day, Elijah went back. And he knocked on the door again. And there was commotion inside again. And then he heard the shrill voice screaming out, Ozeret, Ozeret, go to the door. And sure enough, the same thing. The helper opened the door. And Elijah stood there just as he had the day before. And he made the same request. I need help. And the Ozeret said the same thing. She said, no one will help you here, but I will get the lady of the house. And the door closed, and some commotion, and finally the door opened again, and there Elijah stood face to face to the same woman. And he said, please, I just need some help, perhaps a job. If you gave me a job, I would be able to get money. I would be able to get food. And the woman, without even listening to his request, almost cut his sentence off before he finished it. She said, I have no reason to help you. I have no job that I want to give to you. And with that, the door closed again. Well, you know what happened. The next day, Elijah stood in front of that house again, and he knocked on the door again, and the door opened again with the Ozeret, and the door closed when he asked for the request, but the Ozeret went to the woman who owned the house, and this time something different happened. You heard the lady come to the door, and Elijah, dressed as a beggar, made the same request. And this time she said, Ozeret, Ozeret, give him some of that wheat over there on the counter, and let him go plant it, and leave me alone. And so the Ozeret, looking somewhat perplexed, gave to Elijah, the beggar, a small bag of this wheat. And with that, the door closed, and Elijah started to walk away, carrying the wheat. And he went to a plot of land, and he planted the wheat that he had been given. Well, what Elijah didn't know, or maybe he did know, was that that wheat had been cooked. And for those of us who aren't farmers, I can tell you that when you cook wheat, it will never grow. You can plant it, you can water it, it will not grow. But strangely, and perhaps magically, as only Elijah could make things happen, the wheat grew. Not only did it grow, but it grew in great abundance, tall and big stalks of wheat. And everyone in town was talking about it, how the beggar, the stranger, had planted this plot of land and now had enormous amounts of wheat. And the word got around even to the lady in the house. And you know what? Being the type of person that she was, and perhaps someone who's a bit jealous in how she does things, she yelled out, Ozeret, Ozeret, her servant, her helper. Take all the wheat we have. Take all the grain, even our rice. Cook it the same way you cooked our wheat, and then let's plant it all in our fields, and we will have the greatest abundance of food we have ever had. Well, you know what happened. The Ozeret did as she was instructed. She cooked all the wheat and all the rice and all the barley, everything they had. And they had it planted in their fields. But this cooked wheat and barley and rice, of course, didn't grow because it wasn't planted by Elijah. And so suddenly, this woman in her grand house was, by her own misdeeds, without food and without wealth and without a future. Elijah came to her one last time, and he pounded on her door. And she came to the door this time herself because she no longer had servants. And she said to Elijah, this beggar in front of her who now had his own wealth from all of the wheat that he was able to grow, why are you here? You've destroyed my whole life. And Elijah said, it has to do with how we treat one another. That's how we really find wealth and treasure in life. And so I give to you all the wheat that I had grown from the cooked wheat that you had given me. The woman realized that somehow this beggar was someone very special, someone magical, someone who knew the bad sides of her heart, but who could see the good part of her heart. And she became, again, a person with some wealth because of Elijah's act. But more importantly, she became a different person. She always shared her wealth. She always offered jobs so that people could earn their way in life. And she was always the first person and the first house that anyone in town pointed to when a beggar would ask, "Where can I get help?" And we know that that is part of what Judaism teaches us. Who we are is not what we own. Who we are is how we act and how we help one another. In this great time of the high holidays, let's renew our commitment to make our hearts generous and helping of everyone we encounter, even a beggar who's a stranger that we do not know. Shana Tova.